All right, I've decided to make a second video, and this one I'm doing from a little bit more of a raw state. Um, if you watched my first video, you might know a little bit about my history and sort of trajectory since starting in antidepressants about 9-10 weeks ago. And um, today's been a tough day, and so I felt like this was a good moment to actually record, um, because I think it's good to have realistic depictions of what can be real for people when trying out antidepressants, when dealing with mental health in general. And I think specifically today, you can probably feel my energy is a lot more, it's lower. It's lower than when I made my previous video. It's lower than it has been for the most part while I've been on these antidepressants. But you know, the last couple of weeks have been a little bit of a roller coaster. And I had a really impactful conversation with someone today, and I just wanted to share a little bit of the wisdom that came out of that. It made me think back to when I was maybe 22 or so, and I had my boyfriend's mother at the time was a wonderful woman I had in my life. She's a therapist and just a very present, warm-hearted person. And she gave me, I think it was a magnet or something. It said something along the lines of, life is not about learning to be happy, it's about learning to dance in the rain. Right? And you've probably heard this expression before. I think I hadn't at the time. I think it was my first time hearing it, and it certainly impacted me at the time. But today I felt I gained a new level and layer of understanding around what that can mean. Because this conversation that I got into today, as I was sort of I was triggered by something and spiraling way deep into my sympathetic nervous system, totally into like flight and freeze inside myself. And after I was in that state, gradually was able to come out of it, reconnect in this conversation. And what came out of that in the end was that this person I was speaking with noted, I think so much of it has to do with acceptance. Like, you don't want to accept when you're in these difficult states and you fight them, you resist. This is something I've noted before, but it's one of these things that some of us just have to learn over and over again. Resisting our life circumstances, whatever it is for you, resisting our current emotional state, resisting our fears, resisting our social status, resisting our relationship status, whatever it is that you're resisting, that I think is at the crux, at the core possibly, of what makes us suffer. Right? Even as I'm saying this, I'm realizing, oh yes, there's so much, this rings so true if you follow any kind of Buddhist principles, with those ideas of what is suffering. Because as much as I do believe we have agency in our lives and can affect change absolutely, in our lives and in the world even. Um, there's another part of reality where we just are where we are in this moment. We are where we are. Um, and the more we resist that, I think the more likely we are to fall into a depressive state. I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago that was framing depression, I think very helpfully in a way, as purely a matter of how much time you're spending with your sympathetic nervous system, or your I think people call it rest and digest sort of state of your nervous system, versus your parasympathetic or your fight, flight, or freeze. And according to this person, I don't know what the research is behind it, supposedly we've come to the conclusion that the maximum amount of time we can spend in that fight, flight, or freeze is about 20% of our time before we start to lose it in some way, before our mental health starts to really degrade. And that really rung true to me. I think it's a really important piece of information, and now I would take it a level further in my own thinking, just according to this cycle that I've been through today and the discussion that I had today, and add that we need to take a look at ourselves, really cultivate that self-awareness, and figure out what is it, and really be honest with ourselves. What are the things that are putting us into that fight, flight, or freeze state? What are the things that are activating our parasympathetic nervous system? Okay, you might, for example, say, well, there might be some basic things in your life. My finances aren't in order, or I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent next month. That's really real. Maybe it's your relationship is uncertain, or you've just ended a relationship. These things are real and they really impact us. And we are capable of resisting those realities internally in such a way that it just augments our suffering, and I believe probably perpetuates that state of having an activated parasympathetic nervous system for longer. Because you can see now, I was in a state of resistance for a couple of hours, a couple of solid, intense hours today, and now coming back around to this point of view of acceptance. Like I accept where I am, and it's not perfect, and there's pain in it, and some things are not the way that I want them to be, and that hurts. But I love myself through it. It's okay. It's okay. Things are not perfect. And you can probably see, I can feel like just the way I sighed a moment ago, and like my body's relaxing and letting go. It really matters. It really matters that we allow ourselves that acceptance of who we are and where we are. A wise woman once said to me, I think this is an old quote, I don't know who said it originally, that that something along the lines of change can't happen until we accept what is. It's this sort of the paradox. I think it might be called the paradox of change. We have to accept the way things are, before things might be able to then open up and move organically, before our personal energy can open up and shift organically in the direction that's healthy for us and right for us. So I just wanted to document this, maybe as a note that on antidepressants or not, I hope it's been a helpful part of my process. It's something I've needed to learn again and again, and hopefully will continue to internalize. And I hope it's helpful in some way to you too.